So
Okay.
if we could record it, that would be helpful.
I am recording.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I will send out this document after the meeting, just so everyone's aware. Can everyone see my screen? Can everyone read my screen? Let's make that a little bigger. So for those returning to year 2 of the Universal Reading Screener program and the Tennessee Literary Success Act, this document's going to look pretty familiar. It is the same document I sent out last year with a few tweaks based on what we learned last year, what we encountered last year, and what we're trying to address for this year. Same start and end dates for each testing window will be provided by Jennifer Jordan and her team. So let me go a little higher level than that. Actually, data file formats will be the same. The way you deliver data files to us will be the same. The calculations and what we request in terms of percentiles, national percentiles, district percentiles, SGP versus the LOI translation that is out on the department's website. All of that is the same as it was last year. And Marianne, I know you're new to this, so there's a little bit probably back context that you'll need for some of this that Jennifer will probably go through with you just to help you get up to speed. But we ask during the testing windows for all vendors to provide a data file that you FTP to us for all of your districts that have chosen you as their universal reading screener for the K through 3 grades. So that official list of those districts that have chosen you as their vendor, that will be turned into Jennifer. She manages that with the districts to make sure we have that correct information. In that data file, which the data file format is laid out in this document, there are some primary key elements that we require from all vendors. Those being the state student ID, the teacher license number, the state district ID as it is according to our school directory, and the state school ID as it is according to the state's school directory. Most all of your districts will have it. You guys will have that information as well, or you should have it based on other things that you do with the vendor. But those 4 fields are mandatorily required. I will say in last year's data, by the time we got to the spring, most every vendor was really pretty good about the cleanliness of the data, but we still ended up with about 20% of the student population across all vendors that did not have a proper state student ID. So this year's, we provide, and I'll go through this again, when you guys submit your files, we provide two error reports. One is, did your data even load? And that's usually based upon whether we expect data for a district or for a school from you as a vendor. Is the file in the proper format? Does it have all the required data elements? Things like that. We then provide a second set of reports that go back into your FTP folder of when we compare teacher license number and state student IDs against our state systems, right? So it is the responsibility of the vendor to work with their districts to make sure those reports come clean on each time a data file is submitted. So you can submit as many data files as you want within the 15-day grace period after the close of the testing window for the final data submission date. So I know Tracy and Lori know this, but Marianne, so we have our first test window runs through October 2nd, I think. You're on mute, Jennifer.
September 30th.
Okay, through September 30th. You then have till October 13th to submit us your final data file 14th. For the fall window. 14th. Sorry, so you have till October 14th to submit us your final data file for the fall window. You can submit it 10 times and it's always a full comprehensive file of all of your districts. There's not incremental files. It's not district by district or school by school. You always resubmit a full file. And that goes You can submit as many times as you want until your error reports come clean, but October 14th, we're going to cut off any file submissions for the fall window. Okay. So I encourage all vendors to really look at that state student ID error file that you get back in your FTP folder this year to work with your schools and your districts to get the cleanest data possible. We have gone back with Clever and ClassLink this year to reinforce, because a lot of your platforms are rostered through the Clever and ClassLink interface. We're going back to them to reinforce the need for those standard fields to be pulled over as part of the rostering into your systems. But you guys all get error reports of what does not match to the state student ID, and is highly encouraged that you work with your districts and schools to make sure those reports become as clean as possible prior to the end of the submission window. Okay.
Can we jump in
Again,
on these points?
Sure.
So I saw teacher license number. Is that the LCN?
No, local class number is not teacher license number. There is a teacher. Sorry.
Yeah, right there. Student ID, got that. Teacher license number. Is that the teacher state ID or is that LCN?
No, it is not LCN. It is the teacher state. So every teacher has a teacher license number that is issued to them when they become a licensed teacher in the state of Tennessee.
Okay, so
every teacher knows that. Every school district knows it. It is in their SIS package.
That's cool.
They submit that.
Okay. Yeah. Did we drop LCN then?
We did not drop LCN, but same as last year, it is requested but not required.
Okay.
So, right, that bullet point specifically are the required fields that we are asking for.
Okay. My second question is, we, with a glad and happy heart, spent I could almost recite you every error we had. We documented them to the T. And we also tried to talk to you guys about it to understand them, because sometimes it'll show like a bulk of errors, like 1,000, but it could have been for 4 kids because it's by line and by this and by that. And so we got really worried about that it looked like a lot, even though it could have been for very few kids. And then there were some errors we got where there was like no teacher. There's one report that came through that we never understood, where it had like, there was no way to match it the way it came through. And we would really love to go through those with you guys to understand the nature of some of those. Can we have the opportunity to do that with you this year?
So Lori, you're asking, can we go over the exception report so that you understand what the exception report is?
Yeah, and I mean, we basically deciphered those exception reports ourselves, and just spent all spring and summer studying them and figuring them out. But there's just a few things we haven't figured out. And, so if there's anything additional that we could improve or correct, we'd want to do that. So that's.
Yeah. Do other individuals on the call, are you also having difficulty understanding the exception report and understanding how to assist districts in cleaning up their data?
And let me just say one more thing. There's a couple of things in our exception report that like the school or the district decided not to use us. And we communicated that like several times, and they're still being assigned to us.
Okay, one thing that we're going to do today following this call is I have confirmed with districts and public charters who their universal reading screener vendor is. I'm going to send you I'll send you a spreadsheet that says these are the districts and the public charters that have indicated they're using your product. Please verify. Last year, we did have some districts that are using multiple screeners. They might use one screener for universal reading screener, or they're using multiple screeners at different grade levels. And they're using one for the universal reading screener, but they want to test with another vendor for a different purpose. And so VJ and I have had some conversations about that because we're getting duplicate student data.
Yeah.
Based on for one student. So what we're going to do this year is, again, after this call one-on-one, I will meet with you. We'll go over the list, and those are the students that we want submitted in the upload. So we had this issue of trying to clean up data because students had multiple vendors. So if they're not on the Universal Reading Screener list assigned to you, we need to make sure you don't submit other data. And you may not know that because you may have two schools using, or one school using two different products for different purposes. But each school should have, or each district should have, one universal reading screener. So Laurie, we can verify that. And then it's really, if it's up to you to submit for those districts and those public charters. And if they show up on the exception report after this first time, then just contact me. And we'll come, I'll get with VJ's team as well. I'm happy to set up a time, I think, to go over exception reports with VJ's team. VJ, if that's something that your team has the capacity to do, maybe one time, like after the first, this first window closes, after you submit the data and you receive your first exception report, we could maybe walk through what that exception report, what that information is and how to understand it. I think then you're going to have to go back to the districts and make sure that's where that cleanup process has to happen. So
Yes,
yeah, I'm happy to do that, Laurie.
Thank you. That's great.
Okay.
For us, it'll be probably the second or third time we clean up the exception report, and there's still a couple of lingering ones that we can't crack the code on. But I thank you very much for that.
Okay. Yep, we can do that. Did anyone else have a question to this point with anything that VJ has gone over?
Oscar, you had your hand up a minute ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi, good morning, everybody. And I put my hand down because I figured, well, I'll just take a look at it once we get this documentation. Regarding that school directory link that is on this sheet that you're displaying now, VJ, is the name pretty telling of what that is? It's only going to verify school directory information. Would we also be able to verify if individual teachers are using the correct teacher license number from that directory there?
You are not able to do that from that directory there. That is purely the public facing school directory, which gives you district ID and school number. Okay. School ID. Okay. For verifying teachers are using the correct license number, you can look up teacher license numbers on a state website. However, there's not a way for us to bulk provide those to you. The best that I can offer you is the error reports that we will provide when we bounce the data that we receive up against EIS and our state reporting system to know whether it's a recognized teacher license number or not, and then to work with those individual teachers to track down their license and help them track down their license numbers and ensure it's correctly in their platform.
Right. And is it my understanding that anytime a teacher is onboarded, possibly at a district within Tennessee, that they're issued a teacher license number, or is there a possibility where teachers cannot be assigned a teacher license number? And if so, in those particular cases where it does come back on the exception report, is that something that, well, I guess, how would we go about that situation?
So given the current backlog in the teacher licensure department at the state, there are instances where Teachers will start the school year without their teacher license number issued to them. They are allowed to teach, but they have not been issued their license number. In that case, my recommendation and our recommendation last year was to have those teachers use their local employee number in the teacher license number field. So if we do not recognize them and able to reconcile them, then if nothing else, we can go back with the districts until that teacher license number is issued, at which point they should update their records. But we can always go back to those specific districts and try and reconcile who those teachers are.
VJ, am I correct? If we don't have a teacher license number, until that point, it's a 7-digit numerical, right? That is the local.
I believe that is correct.
Yep. I mean,
it's a 7 to 9 digit local numerical number.
And that's going to be district issued, most likely. But again, as soon as the teacher does receive that teacher license number, that should be updated. Rita had her hand raised and lowered it.
Yeah, Oscar asked the question I had.
Okay.
So that's...
All right. And Tracy, is this the question?
These are piggybacks, so I don't think they count. Thank y'all. So to further Oscar's question, and VJ, just to kind of understand, most of our district partners, when they roster, they're rostering and they're inputting a field from the SIS into what anyone would identify as a teacher identifier. So I would envision it being very difficult for them to replace that with a different field for individual educators. So that wasn't really a question, but I just don't, and maybe you might know if that really is more easily accomplished than what I understand it to be. But sort of in that same vein and kind of piggybacking Laurie's previous conversation, let's say we've gone through exception reports and then we're down to write some of these things. Could we, during whether it be our review meeting or in a written communication, indicate for these 30 exceptions for student ID X, that teacher is not certificated yet and does not have a TLN?
Yep. I think you can in any of those cases where understand the point about the rostering. I think we'll have to work through how districts are rostering in alternative identifiers. I think I want to say a majority of the districts are now rostering through one of the other SSO platforms, be it ClassLink or Clever. So we can work with those two vendors to identify an alternative map field in that rostering platform. So we are having conversations with them currently, and we'll address that with both of those vendors. In terms of data submitted and errors where you don't have a TLN, we'll also look based on the feedback that you give us of your error reports once you've worked through all those errors, to look to see if we can modify our error logic more generically so that if a TLN does not come across, that's not counted as a hard error against you guys, that we do something with that so the data will load, not show up on your error report or as resolved because they do not have a TLN if we're not able to solve the add an employee ID number issue in there.
Excellent. And just having that ability to communicate thereafter sort of what the remaining errors are and any reason that might be the case will be super helpful.
Yep.
Thank you.
And I think that one of the things that happened for us is that one student can have multiple teachers. You can have your intervention teacher, your core teacher, a reading specialist teacher. And I think that that's where some of our errors were coming from.
We've given districts, and we can reiterate this, but they are supposed to roster them under their teacher of record. So
It doesn't
That-
matter in our system though.
Mhm.
It's a one-to-many situation.
Okay,
So that all of the teachers have access to the students' data. It's a decision we made years ago when we moved into RTI.
That's the same for us, Jennifer, if that's helpful. And even one step further, just even if, right, we're kind of using a base set of course codes. So I'm just going to call them credit issuing courses for reading for grades K to 3. So that's kind of the logic that we're following is what course code, right, which then ultimately is the class that the teacher is associated with, would then be considered the primary reading teacher for that student. So similarly to what Laurie's describing, it could be that there is more than one teacher, a primary, more than one teacher assigned to that class for similar reasons that Laurie described. They have an interventionist, that co-teaches, et cetera. So it's then identifying which of those educators is responsible for the reading instruction of that student. So there could be cases where either we would really ideally need to report to, which I know is not how the requirements document is set up. 2, you make a best guess, right? And then it's not the actual teacher of record. Or 3, I'm out of number 3 right now. I'll come back to you if I think of it.
Well, I'll give you the number 3, and then we don't need to beat this horse anymore on this call, I don't think. But number 3 is then you end up with like 1,000 errors for one kid. Because you got multiple teachers, multiple lines of scores, multiple seasons, etc. And we are people who don't like to be wrong or bad, right? That's why we're all in the positions we are. And then we feel very bad.
yeah, VJ, that you're going to get multiple, if you submit data that might have some errors and that you have multiple teachers, then yeah, you're going to get multiple lines of data errors. We need and districts may have to work through this with the vendors, but we need the teacher of record. We spent a lot of time, and not me because it wasn't me, but VJ's team had to do a lot of digging to make sure that the teacher of record matched in EIS and also within the data that was submitted, because that's a requirement of the Tennessee Literacy Success Act. I'm not sure.
So I think they're based upon the measure that you guys are providing in the reporting, you could provide a different teacher number. But Jennifer's correct in the case where you have multiple teachers, that student should still always be attributed to the student's teacher record, be it their homeroom teacher or their ELA course teacher. That is who the student should be attributed to within the system. So and I can't speak to how each of your systems work, whether it's you have here's the homeroom teacher and then everyone else is here's who administered the test. But the student should always be attributed to that student's teacher of record is the requirement that we have.
Jay, would it be possible to send a screenshot, something of where Clever and or ClassLink indicate one roster indicates teacher of record, not necessarily specific to a vendor, but just what is that metadata? What's that field referred to in Clever and ClassLink? And I'm assuming based on kind of how you're describing it, that it's a student attribute. I think maybe those 2 things would be helpful for those of us, trying to kind of configure that.
Yeah, so I don't know that I can send screenshots, but I can talk to both of those vendors about where they're going to try and map those fields to into either their standard fields or their flex fields. I know both vendors were looking at standardizing those flex fields to maintain those key identifiers.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Marianne?
Thank you, first of all, for recording this, because there's a team that I need to share this information with. And secondly, we already started reaching out to the districts that used us last year to share the data. So I'm very interested in getting the information from you to see if there's any other district that is planning to use us, so that we can get, that like there's an agreement that needs to be signed and all of that work aligned. And you said that you'll be able to share that today.
I will. I'll send a follow-up email, Marianne. I also want us to make sure that we're reaching out to the public charter schools, because they are also covered under the Tennessee Literacy Success Act. Last year, they had the option of a manual submission and through 10Share. And you see the bullet there, and VJ, you might expand more on this, but the vendors are going to need to submit the charter data. We had several charters that did not submit data because the vendor didn't submit it, or they did not submit it through 10Share, which meant one, they were out of compliance, and two, if they chose the Universal Reading Screener as an alternative growth measure, they had no score. And so it was a really big issue. We're trying to avoid that by just saying we're not doing 10Share. So I want to make sure that you are aware as vendors which districts have reported and which public charters have reported, so that you can then follow up with the districts. And Laurie, you've already mentioned that there may be some people on the list I give you that say, oh, I'm not using that vendor. If you could relay that back to me, that'd be great. Because they have to report which vendor, and they have to report that in the Tennessee, their foundational literacy skills plan. So we're trying to provide a couple of steps to ensure on the front end that we have the right vendors, so that when we have communications with vendors about districts or charter data, that we can talk directly with you. So Marian, I will email that by the end of day today, that list. We had 2 charters that we were still unsure about, but then those were the 2 outstanding charters, but I think we have those now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jennifer, how soon do you anticipate sharing individually with each vendor the list of their districts and public charters?
With each vendor?
Yes.
By end of day today.
Awesome. Thank you.
And then I'm
And
also
along with that,
I'm sorry, VJ.
we'll make sure this document goes out, Jennifer, along with that.
We will. And then I'm also going to follow up with the districts and let them know that we met with the vendors. We shared this document and set some expectations, and that you all will be in touch with them. So we'll get all of that communication out by end of day today.
Okay, the only other thing I want to highlight, because I know we're over time on this, as Jennifer mentioned, there was last year we had a number of charter schools and some vendors who could not submit through the FTP process last year due to time and technical resources. This year, we're not going to be accepting files coming through the 10Share format. We will request that all schools, be it public districts or public charters, submit through the vendors into the FTP folder. We were unable to track appropriately and make sure with the TNShare process, we got a lot of different file formats, which made for data integrity issues and data quality issues and are inconsistent to apply rules. So we will not, we'll no longer accommodate files not in the required format, or who cannot submit through the SFTP folder and request the TNShare process. So this year it will only come as files from you guys as the vendors into the drop location. So that's the only thing I wanted to highlight. Again, everything else is pretty well the same in terms of file format, structure, all those types of things. And again, we'll get this document out to, along with Jennifer's communications.
Yes, Oscar, that's correct. It's going to include all districts. Not schools. The list I have is districts because they report by district. VJ, did we have an instance last year where we had different schools within districts using different vendors other than
we did.
other than charter? Okay.
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
We did have some instances where different schools used different vendors based on existing contracts prior to the start of the program last year. I do believe last year and going into this year, we did ask districts to standardize across the board for that. And we even had instances with, as you said earlier, different grades within the same school using different vendors. However, we did ask all schools and districts to standardize to a vendor this year.
Tracy and I think and Rita as well.
Well, VJ might have just answered my question because I was going to say we had 2 schools that for 2nd and 3rd grade were using us. And then for K and 1, they were using someone else. So that this year that is not allowed. We would have to be doing all K through 3, or would it be specified on the file that Jennifer sends to us later?
I do think, and Oscar, this may go back to your question. I do think, I'm trying to think about the spreadsheet. There may be a handful, like 2 schools, and often they are the charter schools under like the Achievement School District. The charter schools have different vendors, although they're Achievement School District, they're independent, autonomous charters. So they are going to be listed by school if there's a different vendor, but I think most of those are all charter. Rita, I will verify that. Let me check the list. Let me also, I will email the POCs, the point of contacts for Universal Reading Screener, to verify that there are no districts with schools using various vendors. I think if that's the case, it's going to be very limited. We encouraged that they use one vendor. So let me verify, I will verify that as well. And when you reach out to the districts, you may want to verify that. And if you get some conflicting information, you can email me directly.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm
sorry, Tracy.
I was gonna say, Jennifer, I know we have one district that requested only a specific grades, not all K3, so we're in that same boat. But my unique question is it still the expectation this year that we district schools are not required to include or report or identify in any way students that did not complete the URS for potentially approved reasons?
We have alternative assessment, and these are for students who cannot access. So these would be your students typically that have significant disabilities that prohibit them from accessing the screener. So if you have a student that cannot access the screener, there is a different reporting process. Is that, Tracy, would it be that student or would it be a student that just didn't complete the screening process?
I think that the primary ask or reason would be the first.
Okay.
other, that we heard a few times was they've since, they transferred right before we did our testing. And are we the district of accountability, or is that the receiving district, so on and so forth. And then I guess there could be, right, those few cases where for whatever reason there was a student was absent. I don't know, right? Obviously they had time during the window, but our response has been confirm with TDOE. However, in the past, they have not wanted to receive a notation or blanks, right, for students that weren't tested.
The Tennessee Literacy Success Act requires all students to be tested. So all students need to be accounted for. So either they need to have scores submitted or like a score submitted through the vendors, or they need to be accounted for on the alternative spreadsheet. Did that answer your question, Tracy? Okay. I have communicated with districts, and I have had a couple open house with the public charters to make sure they understand the expectations, especially around data submission. And so I will follow up with them as well. So if you have a charter, just know, and probably you do know with working in Tennessee with charters, it's very charter driven. So that communication is with individual charters. While we can share information broadly with the charter director of charter schools, typically you have to really go into the communication with the various charters. So again, we will follow up after each submission with a letter to the district or public charter point of contact and say, you're in compliance or you're not in compliance, please work with your vendor. And as VJ said, you have opportunities to help the districts clean up their data following each submission, with ultimately that last data submission date is pretty much that drop dead date. We have to do a better job with that last submission. So we have to make sure our data is clean throughout the year, because VJ's team has a very quick turnaround in submitting scores to our educator effectiveness team for those alternative growth scores. So there's not the opportunity to clean data. And again, we're going to message to districts, you have, 2 other opportunities throughout the year to clean your data. And so there has been some grace this year. We are not going to be able to offer it at the end of this coming year. I mean, we have that clean data by that date. So and I think we need to make sure that we are engaging in conversations with me so that I can help districts support that as well. Tracy?
I don't know that there's an easy answer for this, but I wonder, is there sort of a threshold that triggers the you're not in compliance letter, like X% of students don't have an accurate SSID? Is it if they have one student that doesn't have an SSID? I think that that would kind of help. I guess what I'm saying is every single individual student is important. I'm not negating that. But when I think about a letter of not in compliance, if they're receiving that and it's literally one error, right? Or it's, as Laurie discussed previously, it's 30 errors, but it's all the same student. I'm just kind of trying to think about what triggers a non-compliance message.
It's if they have exceptions on their exception report.
Any. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
VJ, I'm not sure if you saw Oscar's question about how soon can we begin to send files?
Yep, I was just actually replying to that. So
Okay.
Oscar, you can start sending files as soon as you have data. The window for the submission window for data files starts when the window opens and continues through that that 14 days after the 2 weeks after the close of the testing window. So if you have files that you want to start submitting and cleaning and scrubbing now, you're welcome to do that. We will generate those error reports so you can progressively go through, as long as you continue to send comprehensive data files each time. The way our data load process works is for every file you send, we essentially wipe out what you've sent previously and reload. So if you want to start sending files now to generate those reports, you can absolutely do that.
And we will give, as far as that submission, since you're going to have multiple opportunities, the sooner you submit data, the sooner you see an error report, right? And so the sooner you can start cleaning that data. We won't send non-compliance letters until the very end of that process. So.
Is there any notification that needs to be done when we do decide to send a file? Say, hey, we're going to send a file through to see where we're at, where we stand. Just
Nope.
Send it, and we know we'll get an exception report kicked back into the SFTP site as designed.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, cool, great, thank you.
Because it'll run during the window, the submission window. It's automatically, it'll run every night, won't it, VJ?
It will.
Okay. Yeah.
It runs every night, I think, at like 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
If we have two files, unique files, they need to be dropped at the same time, correct?
Yes, that is correct. Just same as last year for you, Tracy.
Thank you.
We take everything in the folder and merge it all and load it all at once. So
Thank you.
in one run.
And if you do have questions, just email me directly, so that I can respond as quickly as I can. We want to make sure that we're supporting districts. And if you have questions, maybe that prohibit your ability to support districts, I want to make sure that I'm answering those questions for you and providing that support. Ultimately, it's on the district to be in compliance, but we know they depend on working with you as vendors. VJ's team and the assessment team have really been working on, again, that those third-party vendors, ClassLink, Clever, trying to help districts make sure their data is clean, because that's just another person, right, that we have to make sure the data is clean. But please email me directly. I'm here to support districts in this process. Do we have any additional questions, Laurie?
I was just going to say, we all learned a lot the first year, and
Yes.
second year's bound to go even better.
That is such a great attitude. That's what we want to hear, right? We knew first year would be challenging. I mean, it was new to everybody. Even districts, right? Their district practices had to change as well. So we're hopeful this second year will go a lot smoother.
There wasn't a final report, was there? I've been looking. I don't feel like I saw one.
A final
report about, based on all our data about, improvement or at-risk status or anything like that.
For student data that, or for implementation.
I guess either, anything yet come out.
As far as student outcome data, we have presented some data for the state, at state board. And so that will be made public, I think, in the future. As far as implementation, no, we don't have a final implementation report.
Okay. I mean, I've seen some Tennessee data come out, but I didn't think it was anything from this K-3 that had come out yet.
That data has been presented to the state school board just recently, but it's not been publicly released as far as on the website or anything yet.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I can let you know when that happens.
Awesome.
Right. Any additional questions? Okay, if so, just email me. VJ, what were you gonna say?
Nothing. That's it. Thank you all.
Okay, so I will send a follow-up email by the end of the day. I guess with this recording, I'm not sure how that works. I've never sent a recording of a meeting, so I'll figure that one out. And I will also send the vendor list. And I will send a copy of the document that VJ dropped in chat as well. Do you all need anything else? Okay, all right.
Thank you very much.
And just reach out to me directly.
Okay,
All right, thank y'all.
thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.